I'm amazed that many times police officers will stop people for speeding, and if they're talking to the person, don't let them go. Well, that's now a good person. That's someone who's being nice. But that's not generally what people in government are incentivized to do.
Without further ado, tonight's guest, Richard H. Roberts, MD, PhD, is a medical doctor, doctor of biophysics, and former pharmaceutical industry CEO for nearly a quarter century, nearly 25 years at URL Pharma. Tonight's show is all about, in fact, you know what? Earlier this week, the Wall Street, for those watching on YouTube, the Wall Street Journal had a story, and in fact, on their opinion page, here it is. Biden gives regulators a free and heavy hand. An entire column here. And we thought of, I mean, who else than Dr. Roberts, who understands this, unfortunately, all too well. He has stories from the front line. So tonight's show is all about navigating regulatory issues. Some of the highlights, what you need to know about regulatory nightmares. And as Dr. Roberts is going to explain, many people out there are going to think, listen, I don't have a company with 1,000 employees. How does it affect me? Well, Dr. Roberts is going to share that. How you and your company can be protected, and stories from the front lines. With that intro, a very warm welcome, Dr. Rich Roberts. Thank you for joining me here once again on 710 WOR.
Thanks for having me back. And that Wall Street Journal article is very interesting. So this is typical, generally characteristic of a Democrat administration, that they're basically going to let the wolf pack out to go bite people. So that's what we're going to discuss, and how you can try to avoid getting bitten.
Yeah. So our first, my opening question is as follows. What are regulatory authorities, and why should it matter for our listening audience here on Mind Your Business?
So regulatory authority is any of those government agencies that are going to interact with you. If you are building a home, it's going to be your local building inspector, your local construction inspector. If you are an accountant, it could be the IRS. If you own a company, it could be OSHA, the Department of Labor. And if you're in the pharmaceutical company, if you have a pharmaceutical company, it also includes the Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, FDA, the Federal Trade Commission, DOJ. They're all over you. So no matter who you are at whatever level, and whether you own a business or not, especially if you're in management or own a business, but even those who are working in a salaried position and or an hourly position, I'm going to tell you how to keep yourself out of trouble.
Now, I'm glad you're touching on this, but if I may, I'm just going to hold you to this, because many in the listening audience are probably thinking, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm not running a major operation, and I'm not running a pharmaceutical giant. I'm running an operation. I have 25 employees, 50 employees. I'm B2B. I'm not B2C. Do people like that also have to be concerned about regulatory authorities?
Absolutely. So these regulators. Okay. What I tell people is, first of all, there's no such thing as the government. For you, the government is the individual who's from the government who's interacting with you. You might happen to get a nice person who is really not out to get you, not out to trick you, and is very reasonable. But you might get someone who just wants to write up violations and sort of shoot first and ask questions later. This is at all levels of any organization. So, for example, if the president of your company, or if your manager and you're a worker, tells you to do something that's illegal, and they just tell it to you, verbally, quietly, a wink and a nod. Well, if you go do that, they can come after you. The regulatory agencies, law enforcement, they can come hold you responsible. They'll go after the manager also. The manager will say, I never told him to do that. So one of the first things I want to tell you is get things in writing. And before that, I'll even tell you the sniff test. If something has a whiff of being off, maybe not right, and you're told to do something, be courteous. I'll be glad to do it, to Mr. or Miss Manager, Director, Vice President, whatever. just please send me an email, not a piece of paper, an email, because emails are basically forever. You can delete the email off of his computer. It's not off your computer. You can both delete it. It's on the server. So make sure they give it to you in an email. And also, if you knowingly do something that's wrong, they can still come after you. That's the bad news. The good news is, in life, people only do what they're incentivized to do. Right. Now, so what incentivizes a person in a regulatory department to come after you, right, to write violations, or even worse, go after prosecutions? And that is what's going to help their career. So when you have a case like this, where the president now says, unleashes the dogs, go get them, you'll have now regulatory agencies at all levels going to businesses and writing up violations. Now, you have recourse, which is, at the highest levels, it's called the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, where you can actually sue the regulatory agency if you think that they are citing you the words are arbitrary and capricious. But by the time you get through the court system, you'll probably be out of business or you'll be in jail, and it's too late. It's not, unless you're a huge corporation, it's probably really not going to protect you. So, and the other thing you need to know is these regulations change. So Congress doesn't write all of the detailed regulations. Congress will say to FDA, make sure that companies make sure that their products have the integrity of quality, purity, and effectiveness. But all the thousands of regulations as to how that's achieved are written by FDA. And they change. They can change over time without any warning. What FDA was doing for a long time, I'm not running the company anymore, so I don't know if they're still doing it. But what they did was they would do what's called podium policy. FDA would give a speech at some industry conference on their new policy, and then they send their inspectors out all over the country, inspecting and citing companies for violations for not having this new policy that they gave in a speech. One example was going back many years ago. They gave a speech that not only do you have to make your drug according to the application that FDA approved, but you also have to check your raw material and control the particle size of little particles of powder. So they came in and cited us for that. We're like, what? It's not in our FDA approval to do this. It's not written anywhere. They don't care. They cite you for it. Violation. So generally regulatory agencies are incentivized to write up violations. So at the end of the year, they can show their boss, or they can show the department, or they can show Congress, or they can show the township or the state. Look, my inspectors each found 2,500 violations. They're saving everybody. Doesn't matter if most of them were bogus. That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if most of them were trivial. Doesn't matter. I'll tell you something. Somebody I know was building a building, and the township environmental inspector came over and cited them that they destroyed the greenery, which could cause rain runoff. Well, of course, they're constructing a building. The grass was destroyed. Then half an hour later, the county environmental protection guy came over and he cited the same violation. Why? Because the township guy and the county guy call each other. They find something that could be written up, so the other guy can come and write it up also, the township level and the county level. They can both get it on their records. This is how it really goes down. So, if you own an accounting firm, you might have OSHA come in, and if there's a trash can in a hallway, they'll cite you for it. They'll cite you for things that you don't even know existed. So it's a real danger. But the regulations can change. By the way, I'm amazed that many times police officers will stop people for speeding, and if they're talking to the person, they'll let them go. Well, that's now a good person. That's someone who's being nice. But that's not generally what people in government are incentivized to do. They're incentivized to write up violations that come after people. So you need to, number one, make sure if you're told to do something that you think might not be proper, if you even have like an unconscious whip or a feeling, just ask that the person told you to do it and sends it to you by email, and that you see that first before you do it. And you might even ask them by email back, is this legal to do? So that you're protected.
Tonight's show is about navigating regulatory issues. That's in the news these days. The Wall Street Journal had a column on it, an opinion piece on it earlier this week. And tonight's show is discussing a few important highlights. What you need to know to avoid regulatory nightmares, how to protect yourself and your company from regulatory issues, and stories from the front lines. We turn to Dr. Roberts. Thank you again for joining us here on Mind Your Business. Dr. Roberts. Yep. No, it's you always share so much, and I get great feedback. You help for the ratings. When I left 77 WABC, my ratings, I was up at number 3, and now I'm at OR. We got to get the ratings up. So I say, Michal, we have to get Dr. Roberts on. We got to get our ratings back up.
Now that we're talking about regulations, I think it's either been passed or going to be passed a $15 minimum wage. Yeah. So you have to stop paying me $6 an hour here.
Last time you complained on the air that your check bounced. I mean,
right.
Did you redeposit it? It should go through. But yeah, Michal, we got to give him a raise. We got to give him a raise. He deserved the 15. It has nothing to do with the federal regulation. Okay. So, Dr. Roberts, my question now, and this is the question on everyone's mind. How do I protect myself and or my company from the regulatory authorities?
Okay. So first of all, there's no such thing as absolute protection, because they're basically firing, shots at you, and all that you get to do is to try to duck them. So there's no such thing as absolute protection. As I say, in America, there's equal justice for all, especially if you're wealthy. So if they this is for anybody. If a government decides to come after somebody, let's say they charge somebody wrongfully with a crime, though that person has to sell their home, sell everything they have to defend themselves. They go on trial and they're found not guilty. Great. Do they get paid back the money? No. They're broke. They've lost their home, lost their car, have no money. They're penniless. So, people who don't have the money to pay to spend on high-powered attorneys are more exposed than others. The good news, that's the bad news. The good news is, when it comes to most regulatory authorities, again, what gets them promotions? What gets those inspectors promotions? And that's the big fish. So they don't get a big promotion over putting Joe's Pizza Shop out of business. But if they can go cite, a big pharmaceutical company, big evil pharma, and cite them with something, go after them with a criminal, charge, that gets headlines. That's what they like. They're not looking to, generally not looking to bust the guy who's smoking a joint or snorting a little cocaine. But if they get the $200 million cocaine warehouse bust, they're taking pictures in front of the warehouse, and they're taking pictures stepping on the pile of money and the drugs. So that's really what they're motivated towards. So that's some degree of protection. Now, number one protection is do everything honestly. Don't cheat. I'm serious about this. Be honest in business. When you're making a lot of money, this is easier to do. When you're almost broke or you're in real danger of a company going out of business, that's when the rubber meets the road. That's when you get to show if you're really an honest person or not. So do not give into that temptation. By the way, there are companies that have been heading towards bankruptcy, and the CEO, the president, believes that we could just get through this hump, we're gonna be okay. So the money they were withholding from employees for the quarterly payments to the IRS, for taxes on wages, they then take that money and use it in the business. Business goes bankrupt, and they committed fraud. What you have to draw a line when things are not legal, you simply can't do them. Don't do them. Whatever the consequences are, look, people, except rare cases of maybe someone who's a schizophrenic living on the street, people in America don't starve anymore. Whatever it is, if you have to go move in with your parents or a friend, don't do something illegal. That's number one. Number two, not doing something illegal is not enough to protect yourself. It's the unfortunate truth. You need to if you're innocent and you're honest, you need to document that you're innocent and honest. And you can't document it when the inspectors come in or the prosecutors come in. You have to document it while it's happening, and you document it by email. You can even send an email to yourself, or you're sending it to other people, not to your lawyer. Don't send it to your lawyer, because it's something called attorney-client privilege. And if you send it to your lawyer and they release that, then they might break your privilege with the lawyer for everything. But send it to someone else, your company, whatever it is, to document that you're being honest. It's not enough to document this illegal thing is going on, and I'm not happy that I'm involved in it. No, that's incriminated you. But and don't do it. Don't do something illegal. But if you're doing things correctly, you have to document that you're doing it. And when challenges come up and there's a temptation to do something the wrong way, you have to document that you're doing it the right way. If there is ever the worst case scenario, which is a criminal prosecution, all emails will show up. Every email will show up. Every single email. I don't care if you deleted it, you didn't delete it. They will all show up. And the opposing attorney, the prosecutors, they will try to take your words out of context. So not only do you need to document that you're doing things properly, but you better document clearly and unambiguously in a way that people can't. You have to think, how could someone who wants to get me take these words and construe them a different way? You have to always think about this. Everything will show up. They will get everything. They'll get every history of every telephone call. I'll tell you something happened in 1992. I used to try to walk around the manufacturing plant and just walk into the tableting department, the blending department, the pharmacy department, where they scoop the raw materials, and just say to each employee, I just try to do it like once a week. Shake their hand. Hi, how are you? How's your family? I once went into one of the employees' rooms at tableting department, and he said, FDA's in the facility now. What should I tell them if they ask me a question? I said, well, tell them the truth. But if you don't know the answer, don't make something up. Tell them to speak to your supervisor. Right. Then he said, do you remember last month when you told me to lie to FDA about this and this and this drug? And I'm like, what planet are we on? So I said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
I mean, I didn't. I got
right. Left field.
And then he said something else, and it was garbled on the tape. And I said, I just don't know what you're talking about. And I left. When I walked out of that room, I thought, could he be wearing a wire? I said, why would anybody want to be taping us?
Right, and libel. And why would the person be accusing you of libel? I mean...
And I thought, you know what? Maybe he's crazy. Maybe, again, I'm a physician. Maybe he's having a psychotic break or something. Maybe he's doing drugs. I don't know. Wow. Well, don't you know that the Department of Justice showed up about a year and a half later in the driveways of members of our management doing an investigation, and this guy was wired by the FBI, and that tape. I'm going to say everything else. I told everybody, tell the truth, do everything honestly. But that tape was what's called exculpatory evidence. It means you get evidence that proves you're guilty. That proves I'm innocent.
Right.
But you have to be on your guard. I mean, what if I've been reading a newspaper in my office and he came in and said this stuff, and I'm saying, yeah, because I'm not listening to him and I'm reading. You go to prison for that. You need to be really careful. So number one, do things honestly. Number two, document that you do things honestly. And number three, be very, very careful what you write and what you say, because you never know if someone is there as an agent for a regulatory agency, or they're trying to set you up for a lawsuit, trying to claim that you're discriminating against people this way or that way, or whatever it is. Now, as an Orthodox Jew, what we believe is that God's always watching us.
That's right.
It's not when we're in the synagogue. It's 24/7.
That's right. Of course, that was just running through my mind. We're talking a business, but at the end of the day, we all answer to a higher authority one day, and it's all these actions play out.
So you should live your life that way.
Yeah.
But just know that you need to always be careful. You're getting a cup of coffee, someone says something to you. Before you respond, you better be not daydreaming, because that can put you in a lot of trouble. Better focus on what they're saying.
Wow.
Very frightening.
Yeah.
If the government is not setting the regulators out to go get everybody, then it's a more relaxed environment. But if like happening now, where the president is saying to regulators, go get them, you need to be on your toes.
For the remainder of the show, we're basically going to be talking about asking Dr. Roberts to share stories from the front lines, and that includes stories that may have to do with the Consumer Product Safety Commission, Department of Labor, the DEA, the FDA. There's a tremendous world out there, and like Dr. Roberts shared at the beginning of the show, every business there has some relation to some type of regulatory authority. Someone out there like an accounting firm can't just say, well, what does the FDA have to do with me? There may be some outfits out there, some companies that would have even a very limited exposure, although, as Dr. Roberts said, no one really is immune because of potentially some of the dealings that they're involved with. Number one is that he shared, always be honest. And it may sound simple, but of course it's so critical. Always be honest, because you do that, you're safe. Then he also said clearly, document everything. Document everything, preferably in an email, because then it's there on some server somewhere. Dr. Roberts, I hand it over to you. Stories from the front lines.
Okay. By the way, one critical thing I left out was also, if you have a regulatory problem, you need to get an attorney or a law firm that specializes in that area of law. There are tons of law firms. They specialize in labor law, or they specialize in FDA regulations, or they specialize in DEA, and there must be others that specialize in construction, whatever so definitely in accounting. So make sure you have a law firm that specializes in that area, and if things start to get rough, you don't blow your nose without checking with the lawyer first. You don't write anything or say anything without checking with the lawyer first. Okay. I told you some stories that I could tell you from my experience. What was the first one? It was the OSHA. It was Consumer Product Safety Commission.
Yeah.
We used to before we became a major manufacturer of drugs. The company when I joined was mostly a distributor, meaning we bought from other manufacturers and we put our label on it and sold it all over the place. Mm-hmm. One of the products we sold was iron tablets. People have iron deficiency anemia. Iron tablets are little red tablets. They're sugar-coated. They're sweet. And unbeknownst to me, there were some cases of children getting their hands on iron tablets, young children, toddlers, and eating them and overdosing. So we got a letter. I got a letter from the Consumer Product Safety Commission stating that we sell iron tablets in bottles of 100, and it doesn't have a safety cap. And if I don't put a safety cap on it, and even with putting a safety cap on, I am now subject to a $1 million fine and 1 year imprisonment for iron tablets. Like what? I didn't know. Unfortunately, the company was early on when I was there, less sophisticated than we became. Didn't have much of a regulatory department at that point. So it's crazy. I mean, so I immediately, not right away, like stop all sales of this. Should we recall it? Should we not recall it? Get a lawyer, figure out what's going on. And then we got, and told the manufacturer, no more. We have to have these safety caps on everything else.
Right.
And we did it. After that, we got so many heartbreaking letters from elderly people saying, doctor says I need iron, I have anemia, but I have arthritis, my fingers are painful and swollen. I can't open the bottle.
So you're between a rock and a hard place. Yeah.
Please go back to your bottle. I can't. That's your regulations working for you.
Between a rock and a hard place. You're stuck. You have no choice.
Yes.
You have to follow regulations.
Tell you another example before I get into some more juicy stuff.
Yeah.
When the 9/11 attacks occurred, meaning when the World Trade Centers were knocked down, shortly after that there were anthrax attacks around the country.
Right.
Anthrax is a microorganism that infects people and causes death very quickly from infecting the lungs. And some powder was showing up in envelopes in places. Country was going wild. The government couldn't find who was one or more people were perpetrating it. They didn't know. It turns out that there's an old antibiotic called doxycycline that treats anthrax. And we happen to be one of the few manufacturers of doxycycline. So we were able to sell, and we were a purely generic drug company at that time. Mm-hmm. We made almost very little money, almost nothing. On some products, we even lost money, believe it or not. And we're selling, most products up like $2 or $3 for a bottle of 100 tablets made under current good manufacturing practice standards, all the science and the technology behind it. So we could have raised the price to make some profit on it. It doesn't have to be unreasonable, but once you have a chance to make some profit, why not? We got contacted from the FDA. I'm sorry, the Department of Health and Human Services has a group called the Metropolitan Rapid Deployment Force, and they wanted to buy doxycycline from us at government prices, which are so low, there's no profit on it. And they want to do it because they want to have hundreds of millions of tablets ready so that if the next anthrax attack occurs, the next anthrax attack occurs, they can immediately ship this doxycycline into that
and protect
city.
Civilization, right? Yeah.
So, but we have to sell the government prices. So I figured, you know what? I don't like it, but I don't like it because we're really struggling for money at this point. But we're going to do our duty. We'll give half of our production to them. So we sell half of our production. We got Walgreens, Rite Aid, CVS, everyone's screaming for doxycycline. And we said, no, we're giving half of our production to the government.
Wow. Even though, of course, with the drug stores, with that whole, you could have made a profit, decent profit.
Yeah, we could have raised the price and made a lot of profit. But we did our duty to help the government. So we gave it to the government at basically zero profit.
Wow.
Then I get a letter from the Department of Labor. Now that you are a contractor for the government, we're going to come out and inspect your affirmative action policy. What? Because we gave up a profit opportunity to help the society and the government. Now we're going to have an inspection on a labor inspection? I mean, it's like no good deed goes unpunished. Now, we had a perfectly good affirmative action policy. And I personally made sure, and I felt good about anybody who was bringing themselves up from a lower socioeconomic background and they had a chance for promotion. I personally got pleasure out of promoting those people, the ones who performed and who were good and were loyal and capable and hardworking. But, it's like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So we got a lawyer, got a law firm involved, wrote a harsh-worded letter to the Labor Department. And now the Labor Department was actually very reasonable. This is, again, one of those rare cases where they're reasonable, where a regulatory agency is reasonable. They said, we understand the situation. Just have the affirmative action policy on the desk. We'll come in, take a quick look and leave. They walked in the door. They opened up the policy. Bang, bang. They left, no problem. So that they made up for it. But it's like, there's the regulations. No good deed goes unpunished. This is something that I've seen repeatedly in life.
Wow. Dr. Rich Roberts, medical doctor, doctor of biophysics, and former pharmaceutical industry CEO for nearly a quarter century. He's going to share stories about interactions with the DEA and FDA. Dr. Roberts, thank you so much for joining me here on Mind Your Business and for sharing of your valuable time on such an important subject, regulations, on tonight's show. Thank you.
Okay. Regarding the DEA, so we, at our height, manufactured about 2.4 billion tablets and capsules a year.
That's a B? Billion with a B?
Billion, yeah, billion. 2.4 billion tablets and capsules a year. So it's a big operation. There's a lot of product moving through and your batches and chemists and operators and machine operators, everything happening. So I get a call from the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, and some of the products we made were narcotics. This one in particular is acetaminophen with codeine, or it's Tylenol with codeine is what people might commonly know it as. And it comes with 30, 60, or 90 milligrams of codeine. Codeine obviously is a narcotic. I get a call from the DEA. Dr. Roberts, yes, you're the CEO of the company. Yes, you're responsible for those on the operations. Okay, now my antenna is going up.
Yep.
Ultimately, yes. We have been agents on the street that have been buying your Tylenol, your Tylenol with codeine, acetaminophen with codeine on the street. We want you to get it stopped. I said, okay. Can you tell me who from the company is selling it? I said, we have hundreds of employees. We're making billions of tablets a year. Can you just give me a little clue? No, we can't tell you that. Well, so you mean you want me to try to figure it out? Well, how might the product be getting out? Well, I don't know. I mean, look, the operations are run by machine operators, and they report to supervisors, they report to managers, they report to directors. Then in the case of operations, report to the vice president and reports to me. So I don't know. I said, but I don't, it's going to be very difficult for us to find out who's doing this if you can't tell me the person's name. Just quiet. And he says, okay, I'm going to make up a name. It's Joe Smith. Mm-hmm. I said, Joe Smith? Are you kidding me? He's like my friend out there. He's a Dallas Cowboys fan, and I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I go out there, I joke with him all the time. They said, well, that's him. So, okay, well, let me get back to you. I'm going to look into this right away. What's the next call? To a law firm. Because I don't trust a government agency, right? You think they're working with you. The next thing you know, they accuse you of being involved in it. So I get a law firm involved, and the law firm contacted DEA, and I worked out a plan with the law firm and had the law firm communicate to DEA, this is our plan. We're going to put in remote cameras in the tablet machine area, and we're going to record when this guy is making a batch of that product. And we coordinated with the DEA, so they would have agents there, to look at the recordings with me as it was happening. Fine. So the only one I brought in from our company on this, I didn't tell the chief financial officer. I didn't tell the VP of quality. I told only the senior VP of operations what's going on. And I told him, go out and yell at not yell at me, but it would show emphasis, importance that we have customers for our acetaminophen with codeine, 90 milligram. And we have to get it. First of all, we went back in the batch records. I found out that this guy, Joe, is the one who ran the tablet machine for the last batch. So I said, go to your managers and tell them, we got to get this done. It's high priority. And whoever it was that ran the tablet machine last time, you make sure that that's the guy who runs the tablet machine this time, because we got to get this product done, tested, and out the door. Great. So then I found out the schedule, I tell the law firm, they tell the DEA. And by the way, those days there's no Wi-Fi in those days. So on a Sunday afternoon, I had a guy who did construction projects, an external contractor come in and run over the drop ceiling. First of all, I engaged a detective agency, which is Secret Service and FBI people, and they give us little pinhole cameras. And what my construction guy did was he burrowed out a little hole in the drop ceiling, just a little pinhole, a little black pinhole is all you could see. And they ran the wires, multiple wires, 150 feet from the manufacturing area across the office area to a closet in my office. And then we had, they were actually VHS in those days, tape recorders going. Mm-hmm. And by the way, as we did this surveillance, trying to see if we could find somebody stealing, what I came to realize is when you do surveillance, each machine is creating 24 hours of video a day.
Right.
You have 6 machines. You're thinking about 150 hours of video a day. Who's going to look at 150 hours of video?
Right.
It's ridiculous. So people I know are concerned about the government watching them or whatever, but there's so much data generated. And that's another story. Yeah. So, fine. So we got it. It's happening 8 a.m. Thursday morning, whatever it is. So, I said, I told the lawyers, told the DEA that the representatives should come, and they come to the front desk. They should sign in as representatives of Acme Chemical Company.
Right.
Right,
son.
Then I got a call, Dr. Roberts, the front desk. The 2 men here from Acme Chemical Company. I said, great, send them in. They have an appointment. These guys come to my front door. One guy is like poorly dressed, like bushy hair and a thick mustache.
Wow.
The other guy is like 5'9", about 220 pounds, solid, bulging muscles. He has a muscle shirt on. His hair is shaven with only a little silver dollar size amount of hair in the back that goes all the way down his back to his waist. He walks in, he says, I know we look like scum, but we're not. I said, oh no, sir, you look fine to me. You look fine to me. So close the door, open up the closet.
Right, with the monitor. Yep.
And now the operator goes in the room. He's about to start the batch, and they say Unit 1 to Unit 2, we're starting. Who's Unit 2? They have 2 agents in the parking lot watching this guy's car. So as it starts up, when you start manufacturing tablets, the machines can run around 80, 100, 120,000 tablets per hour. But until it gets going full speed, the initial tablets that come out, their weights are not stable.
Right.
So you throw out
spoilage, yeah.
Yeah, right. If that's 1 or 2% of the tablets have to be thrown out. Every time you shut the machine down, start it up again, those go to waste. And if anybody's wondering, don't look in the trash can. It goes to a regulated disposable waste. Okay. So it starts up right away. He opens up his lab coat and he pulls out this big bottle and he starts stuffing tablets in it.
And it's all there on video.
His customers must be back ordered also. So then you see him put the bottle in his belt, close up his thing, and walk out of the room. And then one of the DE agents gets on the radio. He says, Unit 1 to Unit 2, slam dunk, slam dunk. And then they go on to information back and forth. He's got the subjects going to his car, open up the back seat, remove something from underneath his coat. He goes back a few times, and then they said, take him down. I wasn't part of that. They went out to the manufacturing area, but I heard that they took this guy, they slammed him against the wall, and they searched him, and that was that. Fine.
Okay, Doctor, wow, what a story. There's actually only around 3 minutes left to the show, so I'm going to ask, perhaps you could even squeeze in one more story, and then we're going to get to our new feature that we have, and that is to share a business tip based on one of your initials or all of your initials. It'll be up to you, but we have around 3 minutes left, Doctor.
All right, just briefly from that story. So this employee now, we want to terminate his employment, right?
Right.
We terminate his employment, and then he files for unemployment. So I tell DEA we want to deny unemployment because he's caught stealing drugs. Please give us a copy of our tape. DEA says we can't do that until we go through the whole prosecution process. So here we are.
You're stuck.
You got it, right? Okay. How did I get involved in politics? I'm going to give a long story short and leave out a whole lot of things I think are maybe interesting and entertaining. But basically, FDA did inspections on us every 6 months for a year and a half to 2 years, wrote up observations, never called them violations, never gave us drug approvals. And it was clear that these inspectors were trying to put us out of business. So I figured we're here, FDA is here, there's nothing we can do. They wouldn't even return our calls. We give them corrective action plans. They wouldn't respond and just kept us with no approvals. Our profits going down. We're going to go out of business. So who's on top of FDA? And that's Congress. So I went to Senator Arlen Specter, who was chairman. We're a Pennsylvania company. Who was chairman of the committee in the Senate that determines FDA's budget. And went to Congressman Jim Greenwood, who was also in our area, chairman of the committee in Congress that determines FDA's budget. They wrote a letter to FDA and said, look, we don't know quality, we don't know regulations, but they're not even getting back to this company. Sounds like something's foul here.
Right.
FDA then came out and with a vicious inspection, like we're going to get them. We'll show this company, and it showed criminal violations. For example, it showed that when you manufacture pharmaceuticals, your air systems have to be pure, HEPA filters. And if you get work done in your air systems, right, the quality department has to check the air systems before you manufacture drugs again. So it said that we had our HVAC system worked on. We then manufactured drugs and never checked the HVAC system after it was worked on, and we released millions of tablets to the public. That's a criminal violation. So I'm freaking out. Long story short, we go through the documentation. Yes, the HVAC company came out that day, but they fixed the refrigerator. They never did it.
It's crazy.
And it was case after case of that. So after working 16 hours a day for 2 weeks with the staff, I contacted the director of local FDA, and I told him I was freaking out, but I'm seeing now what is written here is false. Dr. Roberts, he said, it's a good thing he called me now and not 3 days from now. That means that they were going to have federal marshals come in and shut down the company and arrest people. And so we did. I would love to give the details, but we're out of time. So sending that half, 2 more weeks of work, 16 hours a day for me, 6 days a week, just not the Sabbath. The staff documents, hundreds of pages. And I said, you have 10 days to get back to us before I'm going to show it to Senator and Congressman. 6 days later, hear nothing. My vice president of regulatory affairs calls the district office manager, and she says, FDA's top priority is to give your company drug approvals.
Wow.
Then we got drug approvals after that. But what happened to the lead inspector who was fraudulently trying to put us out of business? She was promoted and shipped out.
Tonight's show, we can't thank Dr. Roberts enough. When we saw the news coming out about regulatory issues, we were scrambling. Okay, who could we interview? And sure enough, as anyone who was with us for the last hour understands clearly why we fought hard to get Dr. Roberts on the show. Dr. Roberts, before I let you go, we have a new feature now that we're on 710 WOR, and that is that the guest shares in under 60 seconds a business tip based on any of their initials. So you have RHR. So Q, share a tip with the listeners of Mind Your Business.
Okay, RHR. Regulations hurt regular people. I had a people at the end. You need to know. So the government's now going to go after the oil companies, right? Since the new president is in, guess what's going to happen to your gasoline prices? The government's going to go after. They're stopping the Keystone Pipeline. So now the oil have to be shipped in by trucks, polluting the air. I'm not saying all regulations are bad, but many economists say one of the key things to the booming economy that occurred under the Trump administration that lifted everyone. I mean, Black unemployment was the lowest it's ever been. Black employment was the highest it's ever been. It lifted everybody. And a major part of that was that Trump said, okay, if something's really a danger, regulatory agencies go after them, but no unleash the wolf pack. So regular people get ready to pay higher prices for unnecessary regulations. It's a sad truth.
Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe to this channel and be notified every single time a new video goes live. Don't miss out on any of the weekly interviews that I have with top business leaders, sometimes Fortune 500 executives. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications.